Welcome back to another episode of Scent and Vent Customs. I'm here in the shop and let me tell you, it is cold. I think it's like 20 degrees or something out right now, so that's why I'm all bundled up and look like an Eskimo. If you haven't seen the first video of this series, definitely go back and watch that. In that video, we were addressing the interior of this car, but this is another episode 2 of reviving my 1975 Ford Mustang 2. I got this car at Marketplace for $2,000 last weekend. Unfortunately, this car has not ran in 20 years. The plate on the back says the last time it was registered was 2006, which is a full 20 years ago. And the owner told me that it had issues even before then. In this video, we're going to be addressing more motor-related issues, whereas the last one we were addressing the interior. So today we're going to look at things like the carburetor, the sparking system, which would be spark plug wires, and the distributor. We're going to look at the starter, battery cables, and we picked up a battery for this thing, so we're going to see if we have all of the necessary components to start the car. Now, I don't know if we're going to get it actually started in this video, but we're going to make a lot of progress towards that direction. The very first thing that we're going to address is pulling the starter out. Now, the starter may not be bad, but I guarantee the terminal where the wire connects to it needs to be cleaned up, and you can't really do that without pulling the starter. So we're going to pull the starter, we're going to clean up that connection, and then we're going to hook it to a battery and see if the starter actually works. Fingers crossed it does. So let's pull that starter. Should be pretty easy, right? Please come loose! So we're up under the car now, and the starter is located way up in here behind this rack and pinion and this cross member. So the first thing we're going to be doing is dropping this cross member and then unbolting our rack and pinion so we can move it just enough to get the starter out of there. Just got the sway bar and sway bar links, all of that assembly out. We have to do that in order to get to the cross member bolts. So now we just need to pull those 4 cross member bolts, drop the cross member, and then we should be able to get to the starter. We got the rack and pinion dropped. This is for the power steering, and it was sitting right here. But now that that's dropped, you can see this is our starter right here. So we're going to disconnect the wire, unbolt the 2 bolts, and pull the starter out. Okay, so I know it's dark, I know the camera lighting is trash, but one last thing we got to do before we go in for the night is test the starter, because I want to get a new one ordered ASAP as this starter is bad. So we did get the starter pulled out. Here's how we do this. We got our battery and our jumper cables, negative, positive, just like you were jumping a car. And then we have our ground hooked to the starter, because the starter grounds to the engine, which is completely grounded. There's no ground wire or anything. The only wire is the positive going to it. So we have our starter grounded, and now we're going to take our positive lead and we're going to touch it to where the cable bolts for the power wire. And if this slips out and spins, we know that our starter works. So make sure you hold it firmly. Don't have your hand down in the gear, but you just don't want this to go everywhere. It will spark probably a little bit, but if, I'll turn it where you can kind of see, if this pops out and spins and you hear it whir, then your starter is good. So our starter is good. That means we don't have to order a new one. When I initially popped the battery in and tried to hit the key one time before I ever started videoing this process, the starter didn't work, so it's either in the cable, the starter solenoid, the ignition, or the wires, but we know that our starter is good. So that rules out that problem. Unfortunately, that's all we had time for tonight. As you can see, it's dark out and I don't have lights here in the shop. I only have portable lights and flashlights and all of that. Hopefully electric's coming this week to hook up power to our shop, and so we'll have lights in here and we can work late at night. But for now, it's like 5:30, which, yeah, I usually work past 5:30, but it's dark and the camera lighting is terrible. So anyway, I'm gonna head in for the night, and I will see you guys probably tomorrow. Good morning, guys. It is another beautiful morning here in Southern Kentucky. It's still really cold. It's not much warmer than yesterday, as you can see. Last night we ended with testing the starter to see if the starter was still good, and indeed it was. So the first thing that we're going to be doing today is cleaning up the starter a little bit, just to make it look better. But we're also going to be cleaning that terminal to make sure there's no corrosion when we bolt the wire back on, and then we're going to be putting the starter back in the car. So we just got the starter painted. I started to paint it forward blue, but the can I had was really old and the nozzle clogged immediately. So I went ahead and just used some gloss primer gray that I had laying around, just some Rust-Oleum, nothing perfect. Heated it up with a blowtorch, heated the paint can, as you saw, and sprayed it on and then cured it. Just did 2 coats. It's just, you know, a little something. It looks like a brand new starter now. It's not going to be rusting. It won't corrode as easily. While we're waiting on that to dry though, we're going to deal with these battery cables. I got new terminals for them because these are old and junky and corroded. So we're going to be replacing these ends here, and then we're going to go down and clean the starter terminal off of any corrosion, shine that up, and get it ready for when we bolt the starter back in. I just dumped that whole container of terminals out. I'm stupid. Another thing I decided to go ahead and do is pull the starter relay out and test it. This might be confusing, but I'm going to try to explain it as clearly as possible. So we have our positive coming from the battery. It bolts to this side of the relay. The relay is grounded at all times, so this is what our ground wire is for. Now this side where I have the meter hooked up to, this would be the power going to the starter. So we need to make sure 12 volts are going to go from our relay to our starter when we hit the key. And when we hit the key, it sends power to this terminal here, the input terminal on the relay, which opens the gate, allowing the 12 volts to pass through. Now, if 12 volts don't pass through, which this is going to tell us how many volts pass through, if 12 volts don't pass through, then our relay is bad. The starter needs 12 volts. So when we touch this wire, it's just like we were turning the key. And now watch this. 12 volts. So you hit the key, boom, 12 volts go through your relay. We know this relay is good. Got our relay reinstalled here. And what I've done is taken this wire and grounded it directly to the relay, and then we'll run this over and hook it to our ground on the battery. That way, if the car ever is not grounded, we can still start it. We won't have a ground issue. It's just an extra safety. It's not really something you have to do. And then I was getting ready to hook it back up, and I found this here. It's just a frayed, broken up wire and everything. So we're gonna cut this back here, solder a new one on, and then get that connected over here. We got all those electrical connections cleaned up. We replaced a bunch of terminals. I found a couple more wires that needed to be cleaned up. We cleaned up the relay. We remounted everything. We put new battery terminals on. And our starter has been drying for a little bit. So she's looking fresh and new. So the next step is going to be popping the starter back in the car. Why is Mr. Starter not spinning? Maybe the motor's froze up again. There's if it spins, I'm gonna get sprayed with gas or sort of junk. It appears we have a ground issue with Mr. Starter. What we're gonna do to confirm is we're gonna hook a ground here, and then we're gonna run the ground down and attach it to the starter and see if it is a ground issue. Should be on there enough. Let's get the positive back on. Alright, let's see what happens. Starter won't spin. Whoopsie. Okay, so for some reason the starter won't spin, so we're going to try turning the motor over a few times by hand and see if the motor's froze up, or maybe the starter is bad and it would just engage only sometimes. I'm not sure yet. We may have just painted that starter, installed that starter, spent all that time on that starter, and it's a bad starter. Yeah. Yay. When I put power to the relay to open the circuit, basically turning the key without turning the key, the starter just clicks. Like it tries to engage, it just hums for a second and stops. It won't turn the motor over. And I can turn the motor over with a ratchet, so it's not that the motor's locked up. I'm just assuming that the starter is for some reason burnt out inside or too weak to spin the motor, but it'll spin when it's out of the car. Turns out the issue was just a bad connection on the starter where the terminal went on. It wasn't touching the stud right, so I put 2 washers in there and made sure it was nice and tight, cleaned up. Now it works. So again, we don't have the key in the car, but we've got this little wire here. So you just touch it to the relay. She cranks. Now that we have the engine turning over, the next step is to make the engine actually run. Now the 3 components to making an engine run are spark, fuel, and air. Air is simple because there's air all around us. The engine automatically gets air. Fuel is even a little easier because you can manually dump fuel into a carburetor. You don't have to worry about the fuel lines to the gas tank quite yet. So that leads us to the hardest thing to get next to cranking the motor over, and that is spark. So we're going to be popping the cap on the distributor, filing off all the points to make sure that it can create spark in there. And then we're going to wire brush all of the original spark plugs with the hopes that they work. Now to test that they work, we're going to pop them into the spark plug wires, but not put them in the cylinder. And then we're going to sit them on a piece of metal and watch when we turn the motor over, and they should spark to the piece of metal. If they do that, then they work, and our distributor works as well. Then we can put them in there and start working on fuel and carb issues. But first, let's address the spark. Okay, so normally you could just take this and touch it to the engine or something and you'll be able to see the spark because the engine is steel. But this engine is so rusty and everything that I don't know if it's actually going to be an accurate representation. So I took the cross member from underneath and just cleaned off the top of it so it's bare metal so we can really see what's going on here. Now I've got the spark plugs laid out. I'm probably going to have to touch each individual one though to make sure it's sparking. But all we're going to do is just crank the motor and see if these spark. You don't want to be touching the end of it or the metal cross member here when you do this. Okay, no spark on that one. No spark. No spark. Alright, we're getting no spark at all. So I ended up pulling the ignition coil and testing it, and it was bad. So I went ahead and got another one and wired that up. So that's in there. But also, when I did that, that didn't change anything. And I tested, and our ignition module is actually bad as well. Well guys, that's going to wrap up this video. I have a new ignition module on the way. I also ordered some U-bolts and leaf springs for the rear end. I ordered a carburetor rebuild kit, so we got a bunch of new parts coming in for this thing. I might have to order a distributor. The distributor on there I think may work, but it's kind of iffy. And then also, looking around in the engine bay, the wiring harness on top of the engine has a lot of damage from mice, from heat, from just being out in the weather. So we're going to have a complete wiring video. I'm going to pull that harness out, and then I have the interior harness as well that I've pulled out, and we'll take both of those harnesses completely apart, strip them down, make sure everything is how it should be, fix wires, fix connectors, rewrap the harnesses, freshen them up. I found all of the wiring diagrams for this car online and printed those off. So that will be a cool video coming out soon. And maybe you can learn a thing or two about going through wiring harnesses. I look forward to continuing this project and showing you guys as I go along. Remember to like, comment, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And until next time, keep sending and bending. The very first thing that... why can't I say that? The very first thing, it's not that hard to say. The first.